Okay, so this person says you can borrow against your paid off house. Your house can be used as collateral regardless of its cash flow generating capacity. Okay, so I have a challenge for this person, right? Because my point in the previous video was that cash flow rules everything, right? Without cash flow, the value of the asset means very little. So my challenge to this person is take this paid off house as an unemployed person, then go to the bank and say, I have this wonderful paid off property and I need a loan against this. Do you think they're going to give you the loan? Why not? Because you don't have cash flow. You see, it still comes down to cash flow. It doesn't matter whether it's coming from the property or from you. Cash flow needs to be proven somewhere. And until people understand this as property investors, especially if you want to be a property investor, if you don't understand this concept I'm going to explain, number one, you'll never become a good property investor. And number two, you'll get into a lot of financial trouble. You see, I worked in the commercial property division of the bank, but before I got into that division, that was 2007. By that time, I already had about 5 residential properties that I owned. I was renting them out. So I was already a residential property investor, but my problem, the mistake I was making was that I was not assessing property deals the way a property investor or the commercial property division of a bank, for example, assesses a property deal. I was basing it based on what? On my salary, how much I was earning as an employee. So when most people are thinking they are property investors, but you're basing it on what your salary can afford, if that's how you're making your decision, that's how you're going to get into trouble. You know why? I'll give you an example. In the commercial division of the bank, right, we used to work on what we call loan to value ratio. Loan to value ratio basically says, based on the value of this property, what is the maximum that you can lend against this property? And each property was different. It was different for a shopping center versus industrial, or versus mixed use. But normally it was around 70%. So if a property was worth 10 million, the loan to value ratio said we can only lend 7 million against the property. But it didn't end there. Then we had another ratio, which was a cash flow ratio. It's called the debt cover ratio. And with the debt cover ratio, when we look at that number based on the income of the property, if that ratio said we can only lend 5 million, guess what? We're only going to give you 5 million, even though your property is worth 10 million. And that was the biggest fight we would sometimes have with clients, because the client would say, but my value is 10. Why can't you give me 7 or 8 or 9? And we would tell them, because your cash flow doesn't support it. Your cash flow doesn't support that. Here's the problem in the residential division of the bank, a home loans division. When people are becoming property investors as residential property investors, the home loans division is not looking at how much the property can support. And that's problem number one, right? They are looking at how much you can pay based on your salary. And if your salary says you can get a 100% loan, that's where people are making the mistake, because they want the 100% loan. Not realizing, okay, it's good to take a 100% loan when the cash flow from the property supports that. But the moment you start taking 100% loans, okay, for an extended period, because we got to like 10 properties, then we couldn't borrow anymore. Because why? All our decisions were based on, I earn so much. And because I earn so much, I'm going to continue taking loans, and then I'm going to partner with this person. That's what we were doing. But then we got to a point where we couldn't grow anymore. Why? Because we were blocked based on affordability. So if you want to build this big property portfolio that you have dreams of, if you don't understand this concept of cash flow is king, and you keep on basing your decisions based on value and asset value and a paid off property, if you're not making your decisions based on cash flow of the property, you'll never become a good property investor, and you'll get into a lot of financial trouble. Okay? Because you can't, this year, it's essentially incorrect to say this, that you can just use the house as collateral, even if it's not income generating. It's the worst mistake that you could make. Right? Because the bank, if you're earning a good salary, they'll give it to you, but leave that thing as a non-income producing property, and then continue taking on more debt and more debt. Because remember, as an individual, you're not just buying investment property. You are also buying your house, your own house, and you're buying cars, and maybe you've got credit cards and you've got retail debt. So as you build up all of those things that you need to pay, if that house continues being a non-income generating asset, that property, how long are you going to survive? Financially, how long are you going to survive? What do you think? Okay, so be very careful about how you make decisions. Learn to assess property. like a commercial property investor assesses property. That's the right way to do it. Not the way the home loans division of the bank is doing it, where they're basing it on salary. So even if you're going to be using the home loans division of the bank, you need to take responsibility to learn how to assess property deals like a property investor would assess it, based on cash flow, not value.